Good morning, everyone. This is a very warm welcome to everyone here in the room at ESA headquarters here in Paris. But this is also a very warm welcome to everybody watching right now the live stream on our ESA web TV. A short announcement, there are translation services available in the room, the headsets you find in front of you, and you can basically select the languages there in front on the left side of your microphone. These translation services are unfortunately not available on the live stream. So before I give the word to Jan Wörner, our ESA Director General, I would like to reassure you, of course, that after his introduction, there will be the possibility to ask questions here in the room, but not only here in the room, but it will also be possible to ask questions remotely by sending an email to media@esa.int. I repeat, media@esa.int. This is for those that are watching the live stream. Please always state your name and your affiliation when you ask questions. Questions can be, of course, addressed to Jan Wörner, but they can also be addressed to his team of directors and colleagues that are here today supporting him here in the room, but that will also be available for questions afterwards. And I am sure that Jan will introduce them in a moment. My name is Ninja Menning. I am here the head of Media Relations and the newsroom, and I give the floor now to Jan Wörner, ESA Director General.
Thank you very much, Ninja. Yes, and before I start with my presentation, I would like shortly to introduce the second row on this side. So from the left to the right, it's Günther Hasinger, Director for Science. Then Claudia Riemann is here for all the financial aspects. Then we have Eric Morel, who is the Director for, and I'm always have to look to that because I forget something, Industry, Procurement and Legal Affairs. Then we have Lucia Linares, who is here today for Space Transportation. Daniel Neunschwander is at this time already on his way to Kourou because we will have a launch this morning. And just on time, it's here Dave Parker, Director for Human and Robotic Exploration. Paul Verhoef is here for navigation. I'm very happy, Paul, because we missed you for some time. It's good to have you back here. Then we have Rolf Densing, Director for Operations. And then we have Pierluigi Silvestrin. He's here for Earth Observation. The Director, Josef Aschbacher, is at this day in China. And then we have the next one is Hermann Ludwig Möller, who is here for telecommunications and integrated applications. And we are still missing Mr. Wehner, who will be here for Franco Ongaro, Director for Technology, but he will come in a minute. So this is a short introduction. So all of them are ready. Also, if you have questions which you believe that the Director General cannot answer, then directly, or if I cannot answer, I will directly ask them. So therefore, we are ready. And before I go into the details, I would like to wish all of you a Happy New Year and all the best for this year, because that is important at the beginning of a year to think about that it's not just another year, it's a very special year. We all know that the world is looking to challenges, and the presentation I will now show you is a mix of something of Space 19+, something of the future, something of additional information I would like to give to you. Challenges, of course, at these days, each and everybody is talking about climate change as the predominant challenge. Yes, it is predominant, but we have also other challenges. And for me, it's important that we always consider that space can deliver things in order to tackle these challenges. And what does it mean to tackle challenges? If you have a challenge, you can now say, I look to this slide just from the viewpoint of climate change, then it's true, but also if you look to it from other challenges. So the first point is, and this is sometimes forgotten, you have to discover the challenge. You have to understand that there is a challenge. You have to identify the challenge. So climate change, for instance, was not a given. It was not written in the Bible, take care of climate change. It was that through an exploration to planet Venus that climate change was discovered, because Venus has a stronger greenhouse effect than the Earth. So therefore, discovery, identification is the first step. The second step, of course, is monitoring. And monitoring is what we are doing with Earth observation, especially for climate change, since decades. So monitoring is good to get all the data, sea level rise, melting of glaciers, temperatures, whatever. But the next step is then also to take this data and make them available to the decision makers, meaning raising awareness to the general public, but also to politicians. And then, if we have all of this, then we can think about how to mitigate the special challenge, or even how to protect against a challenge. In case of climate change, of course, you know, all the mitigation. And space can also deliver aspects for mitigation when we are looking for traffic congestions in space on Earth, which is, of course, polluting, so we can reduce it, for instance, by help of navigation and telecommunication. I will not go into detail this, but for me it's very important that this question of challenges is an important aspect for ESA. And for that, space is an infrastructure. It's an infrastructure because using the infrastructure we can understand better all these challenges, we can tackle them, but space is at the same time also an enabler for future. And of course, all of this came together in Space 19+. I know that most of you know about all the details of Space 19+, but it's important also at this time, shortly after Space 19+, to look a little bit back how we did it. And one very important aspect was to have really a narrative for what space is doing. You are all converted, I believe, and therefore it's easy because each and everyone knows what science is, what applications, Earth observation, etc. are. But it's important to give this message also to the citizens and to the politicians, and therefore we structured in the preparation of Space 19+, we structured what we are doing in 4 programmatic pillars. The first one, science and exploration, and we know that this is already something because science is a mandatory program, as most of you know, while exploration is an optional program. But we put it together in one pillar because if you ask a normal person what is the difference between science and exploration, I'm sure you will not get a sufficient answer. And if you then try to explain, in science we go to Mercury, in exploration we go to Mars, it's not really a better explanation. But for us, of course, science and exploration is a different thing, but we are joining forces in this respect. The second pillar was a new pillar we created, safety and security, covering both safety in space and safety and security applications from space. The third one, more the traditional applications, Earth observation, navigation, telecommunication. And the fourth one is enabling and support, where we have technologies, operations, but also the transportation aspect. So these are the 4 pillars which were the basis for Space 19+. And we ended the Space 19+ presentation with the word time for decision, because that was what we asked the ministers to decide, to put numbers on the table, to subscribe the different programs, etc. Now, the results of Space 19+, also in very short words, overall subscription, 14.5 billion euro. This is a different number to the one which you heard when I was presenting that in CV. The point was that Romania could not subscribe during the meeting, so they had to subscribe a week later. So this is the final number, 14.5 billion euros. And I have to apologize if you are number crunchers. Of course, this number has also some more digits, but I think that's not so important because we know that there are always some movements. So it was very important that we got an increase of the mandatory program covering science and basic activities. That was a major aspect we discussed for something like 1.5 years before, that all the 4 pillars were supported, but at the same time the ministers asked for further development of ESA. Now, if you look into these 4 pillars and the subscription from Space 19+, you see here, again, this is more complicated than it looks like, this picture. So subscribed overall volume, 14.5 billion euros, yes, but you know that according to our convention, the basic activities, the science, and also now CSG is also for 5 years. So therefore, you cannot compare it directly because the optional programs are for 3 years, the mandatory program and CSG is for 5 years. This picture shows only the 3-year comparison, while the overall amount is 14.5. The logic is very simple. The overall subscribed volume is 14.5, but if you now compare the overall subscribed volume, you would make a difference in 2 years. You would have only mandatory program and not the optional programs. Therefore, this shows a little bit what the ministers decided per year as a distribution of the 4 pillars. So this is the ideas, and you see that science, exploration, applications, enabling and support more or less equal to something like 30%, and safety and security, the new pillar, was 5%. Overall, we got an oversubscription compared to what we proposed. That was in some areas a strong oversubscription with some special reasons, for instance Copernicus, but also GSTP. In some programs we got a slight undersubscription, but I can tell you that none of the proposed programs had to be withdrawn as the last time. So we could do, and we are able to do all the programs. In most of the programs we got really either very close or even above what we proposed. So this was a very good solution. Now, in detail, the numbers, I will not go at all into this detail. Again, this picture shows the overall subscription, 14.5, and the numbers which are not in brackets are the ones for 3 years, while the numbers in brackets are the additional numbers for the additional 2 years. It's complicated, I know, and as a professor, I should say I make it more simple, but I have to apologize. Simpler than this. Sometimes part of our life is complex, and we should not try to make complex things unnecessary and stupidly simple. Now, there's also the question, who are the contributors? And I will be very blunt and give you the data, but right now and here only for the major contributors. You see here that these were the numbers for the main, for the largest contributors at Space 19 Plus compared to the 14.5 billion euro, Germany, France, Italy, and UK. And I know, and I will come back to that there was a debate already concerning the French participation and the Germany. There is something like Race in Space 2.0. So it's interesting to see. I mean, for me personally, I'm looking to the overall amount, forgetting about any nationality. So these are the results of Space 19 Plus. And this was, as I said before, time to decision. Now we have all of this data. The logic is, it's time to act. Now we have to act. So what to do out of that? And you see here what is in front of me, but also in front of ESA. That means also in front of all the directors, staff and contractors, but also in front of the member states. And this means we have to implement the programs. This is a very special challenge to the directors together with their staff. To implement the programs as the ministers ask us. But at the same time, we are looking for development of ESA. And there are several aspects. I mention here only 6 out of that. One is the cooperation with the EU. As you know, we will have, starting next year, the new MFF in the EU. And the interaction between EU and ESA should be organized through a Financial Framework Partnership Agreement, FFPA. So this is one very important step we have to conclude this year. I got the clear mandate from the member states to work on processes and organizational aspects of ESA. We are preparing a strategy for global cooperation, not by just counting contracts and agreements worldwide, but to go into details, going into why are we doing what with which country. We are also developing a strategy for security, including, of course, the very special aspect of cyber. I don't say only cyber security, but also cyber safety. And then we will have, as each and every year, we will have some decisions concerning senior staff, as it is named in our convention. That means directors. We are having right now the position of telecommunications and integrated applications. This directorate is to be newly, we have to find a new person for that. And it's also in this year that there must be a decision upon Director General, because my term ends middle of next year. The ministers also said that they will have in the middle of this year a smaller meeting, not an ESA council at ministerial level, but a ministers' meeting in the middle of this year. And of course, this needs some preparation, and I'm already in the phase of preparing this to give some clear ideas what to do. And after Space 19 Plus, after the ministerial of 2019, we are heading towards the next ministerial, which is just in 3 years' time. You say 3 years' time, that's a long period, but I can tell you last time we started already directly after 2016, the preparation of 2019, and it was good that we started it. So therefore, we are already starting it right now to prepare for the future. Now, the question is also, what about the budget of ESA? This is also sometimes a question, and you will see here a view graph which shows the different incomes. It is for 2020. I'm looking always with one eye to Claudia. If she is suddenly moving like that, I know that I'm saying something wrong. But you see here, I don't give you the definite numbers, but you can calculate easily. If you multiply the overall amount by 0.7, you have the ESA member states, and so on and so on. So 70% of the funding for this year comes from our member states directly. 23% comes from the EU, meaning also some of our member states. 3% from EUMETSAT. And then others, and there's always a question, what is others? And others is a lot. Others are institutions, but also, for instance, industry with our public-private partnerships, etc. So all together, we have something like 6.7 billion euros per year. And now I show you in the next view graph, I hope you still remember what I showed you before. I showed you before the distribution of the largest contributors at Space 19 Plus. You remember this picture? Now we will see the same picture, but for this year. And this is the result for this year. So you see it's different. And this is different because we are still having commitments from the past. And these commitments from the past are, we call it waterfall diagram, are still in the future to be used. So we have there the situation that we have a special situation from France because we have there something coming from past obligations which has to be covered in this year. But this is the situation of the different countries. The main, I should not say the main, the largest contributors. Main contributors are for me all 22, so that makes a difference. So this is now the number crunching, because I know people are always interested in number crunching. But I would like, and if you allow me, I would like also to go a little bit into contents. And some of the pictures you see right now are coming from Space 19 Plus, but they are still valid, and they are the basis for our program implementation. So the first one is, what are our targets, our objectives, our aspects? And this is society, competition, and environment. And if I say environment, of course, we are looking to environment on the surface of the Earth. This is one part of our environment. And the other environment we have to take care of is the environment around our Earth, meaning the orbits. And for these three aspects, society, competition, environment, we had a narrative, again, the word narrative, to make clear to the member states, to the ministers, what are we doing for society, what are we doing for the competition, what are we doing for the environment. Let's start this now with the society. For society, and I take science as a part for society. Of course, science has also competition aspects, has also environmental aspects. But first of all, science is something which is inspiring the society and the scientists, of course, Günther, I know. But it's also inspiring the general public to hear about black holes, dark matter, dark energy, gravitational waves, all these nice words. And therefore, we are very happy that for science we got the increase, as I mentioned before. And science is about 2/3 of the mandatory program. And here are just a few examples. I will not go into detail, but tell you that in this year, 2020, we will have an important launch in February 2020, hopefully on the 5th/6th, depending on whether you are on the American continent or here, a solar orbiter to investigate the sun. And this is together with NASA, and therefore I welcome also the NASA representative, Tim, where he is over there. Okay, so then we have exploration, and exploration has 3 destinations, namely low Earth orbit, Moon, and Mars. And now I have to look to Dave. And whenever you have a problem, please interact. The people should not get the wrong information from the DG if there is something better. So that means the space station, which is together with, with NASA, it's with JAXA. We have here the representative of JAXA as well. It's together with the Canadian Space Agency, and the Russian Space Agency, Cosmos. So it's really something which has a geopolitical aspect, because we are bridging earthly crisis. Even in difficult times on Earth, we are working together in space, and the astronauts don't know what a visa is when they are at the International Space Station, and they even don't need a passport to go from the Russian to the American sector, or the Japanese, or the European modules. So low Earth orbit is further on an aspect, and we are looking for more European astronauts as well to fly and also to look for. And then the next destination is the Moon, and close to the Moon, and Mars. For Mars, we don't think that there is a necessity to think about humans going to Mars, but the Moon is, of course, a destination. Now, we have right now a European astronaut in space. It's Luca Parmitano with Italian passport. And this is just a picture of an EVA, you could say, just an EVA. So far he had 3, and he will do at least 1 more. And he did a very marvelous work, because the AMS, the alpha magnetic spectrometer, had to refurbished, and this is really dangerous work. The scientists told him, you know these movies when they look to any bomb, so to cut the wires. So they told him, please don't cut the wrong wire. And he did a marvelous job. And there's something more on this picture, and this is here, this red stripe. That means he was the head of the EVA. He was responsible for the EVA for the first time. A European astronaut, or I should say a non-American astronaut, was the head of an EVA. This is something very special. It shows the trust of the partnership in the International Space Station. Now, as I said, the Moon is a further destination. This is, and therefore I put the NASA logo over here, is very much driven by the Americans. But of course also Japan is part of it, Canada is part of the game. So we are looking to, and therefore it's written here, an intergovernmental agreement, which is right now valid for the International Space Station, and how to use it also for the gateway, and also to look to some memorandum of that. So this is a thing we have to deliver this year, as well as we are looking forward to the European service modules and their application for the Orion spacecraft. So this shows ESM-1 is delivered, is in the United States, is already integrated with Orion. So this is the next step. But for us, this is not the end of the story. We are looking, of course, to ESM-2, which is under production. ESM-3, we are contracting the thing with the industry, and so on and so on. It's a long-lasting story. And I hope that this is really a fruitful discussion and aspect also for the European industry. And we have this year also, hopefully in summertime, the launch of ExoMars, so ExoMars 2020, with a rover which should drill into the surface of Mars to look for something like space. All of this, I mentioned, we are talking about the aspect of society, and I said inspiration. So all of this comes to inspiration. And inspiration is such an important aspect for our society, well beyond all the numbers and the data only. It is something where we are really helping society to be positive for the future. Now I go to the second one. You remember that was competition. Competition is, of course, the launchers. We will have a return to flight for Vega after the mishap we had last year. So we're looking forward to this return to flight. And at the same time, we are further on developing Vega C, Ariane 6, and both will have hopefully their maiden flight at the end of this year. And according to Space 19 Plus, we have now also the money, the full amount of money we need to have a maiden flight of Space Rider, this small reusable spacecraft which can be used several times, which can do microgravity research in space. Another aspect in this field of competition is telecommunication. This is not only 5G, but also especially also new technologies, quantum key distribution for secured communication. And we will have, hopefully Thursday, tomorrow, the launch of Connect, which is a public-private partnership together with Thales Alenia Space and CNES. And the new type of telecommunication satellite. We started at the same time now I look to Lucia, two developments at the same time, one with Airbus, one with Thales Alenia Space, and already 10 of these new satellites configurations are sold. So it's a big success. And the reason Daniel is not here, he is already over there. For me, it's not important. I will be there tomorrow only. But I cannot help in the preparation. That's expert work. But then the DG can say blah blah when the launch is happening. So therefore, I go there only tomorrow. Another aspect in this field of competition is, of course, navigation. You know that Galileo is implemented by ESA. But in addition to Galileo, we have NAVIS, the further development field. Paul is here, and we are looking not only to applications on the surface of the Earth, but also for outer space navigation systems. Then also we have the link with exploration, with telecommunication, as we always try to have links between the different areas. So in this respect, NAVIS is not substituting Galileo. It's not a competitor to Galileo. It's something, it's complementary. It develops the future. And this is where we are really working on. And we got more money than last time. So a good additional amount to do the work. Still competition. We have research and development. And research and development is also supporting the competition of areas. So now in this area, in this question, we have always a discussion about what is the public, what is the private sector. Are this in space? And I get this question regularly. Is the public sector out because the private sector is getting stronger and stronger? My very simple answer is like this. Public and private sector goes together, and this is what ESA tries to do. And by that, we are strengthening the competitiveness of European industry. So this is the pillar or the area of competition. Now I go to the last one, that was the question of the environment. And environment means, of course, first of all, Earth observation. With Earth observation, as I said earlier, with climate change, we can understand the Earth better. We can understand the climate change, all of this. And we will have another launch also in this area this year with Sentinel-6A. It's planned for November this year. And you see a lot of partners at NASA, NOAA, EUMETSAT, the European Commission. I say partner also for European Commission because concerning the spacecrafts, the space segment, Copernicus is really a joint program, while for the recurrent satellites, I look to you now, it's okay what I'm saying, hopefully. Later on, the recurrent satellites are paid just by the European Commission, but it's for the space segment, it's a share of 70% EC and 30%, roughly 30% ESA. So this is the environment on Earth. The other environment is, of course, the hazards in space. We have the situation that we have solar flares, which can really have an impact on our earthly systems. We have the possibility of impacts of asteroids, meteorites on the surface of the Earth. The dinosaurs died out because of that, most probably. And we have space debris issues. And therefore, we really put this new part of space safety in our program. And one very specific and very special program was the space debris program, which is called ADRIUS, Active Debris Removal in Orbit Servicing. I always have to see whether I get the acronym full. We ask industry in a very different way than before, because we want to be a customer for them in this program. We ask them, bring down an ESA-owned asset. And the ESA-owned asset is on the right-hand side. Oh, I did not want to there. Is on the right-hand side. You see that we ask industry to bring down an ESA-owned asset. And we have a lot of assets which are flying around the Earth, satellites, adapters, and blah, blah, blah. And so we said, please give us a price tag and show us that you have also a business case in that. And so the company came up with an idea, several companies. We had a competition and then it came down. So one company was convincing for us. They said, okay, we will bring down an adapter from earlier Vega flights, because in Vega, if you have two satellites at the same time, you have between the two satellites an adapter, and this adapter remained in space. So it is space debris. So this company said, okay, we will take this adapter down. But as they would like to launch with a Vega, and not as the only spacecraft, they will bring another adapter in space. So without further activities, we would bring down one adapter and bring up one adapter, which is not really convincing. And therefore, in the middle of this picture, you see that we also are providing now a space debris avoidance maneuver. So we will have this adapter, which is in this launch, will have its own engine to have a controlled deorbiting. So we have in this program 3 aspects which are new: space debris removal, space debris avoidance, and a new type of role of ESA as a customer. So 3 at once. This leads me also to the situation that, of course, for the future we need space traffic management. This is something also we have to do in the future together with the European Union and at the end also with our global partners, because we as ESA, we can just provide technical solutions. There are regulatory aspects where we just can give hints. We are not a regulatory body, but then hopefully we come to global agreements as soon as possible. And there are different ideas. I will just mention one idea is that in future, whenever you launch something, that there is something on board. Either there is something on board which makes an automatic deorbiting if the satellite is not working any longer, or the company has a contract with another company which is then saying, yes, we will deorbit if there is the satellite not any longer working. Or the possibility is also to give a deposit at a trustful organization, an agency or what. So in case the company does not deorbit the spacecraft at the end of lifetime, that the agency takes care of that. Now, within this part, we are still in the part of environment. There is also the question of impacting the Earth through an asteroid. And together with NASA, we are having a program where we would like to deflect an asteroid. So the Americans take care of the deflection, and we will go there and have a look also to the science and detailed information, because I always call it billiard playing in space, but billiard is, compared to what we are doing over here, very simple, because in billiard you have a sphere and you know exactly where the center of gravity is. While for an asteroid, you don't know that, and you don't know about exactly the surface, etc., etc. So this problem, this aspect is something which we would like to look also from a scientific point of view. After the impact, we would like to see what happened over there. And then we have solar flare. So the sun, solar storm, there is radiation, there are particles coming from the sun. The beauty of that is aurora, the northern lights, but they can also disturb very strongly the earthly networking, internet, electrical wiring, or whatever. There are a lot of things happened in the past. The Carrington effect in the middle of the 19th century, where there was no internet and nothing but telegraph systems, and the telegraph systems in the US were disturbed very much. Even it is said that in some telegraph stations the paper was burning because of this high voltage. We had then in 1989 in Canada a strong solar flare with dramatic effects in power stations, and we had also during the Vietnam War that about 30 mines exploded because of the effect of solar flare. So this is an issue, And together with the Americans, we are looking forward for a pre-warning system. So the Americans will fly to L1, which is between Earth and Sun, and we will go to L5, which is at the side. And by combining both information, we can really say something about a pre-warning system to be ready then to have some mitigation. So all of this is about environment, and it comes to responsibility. And this means this picture from Samantha Cristoforetti, for me, shows very strongly the aspect of responsibility. We see the thin atmosphere of the Earth, and at the same time we see her face. She is coming back from space, and her face is saying, I'm so glad that I could come back to this very lovely place, the Earth. And therefore we are not looking to colonize Moon or Mars for permanent stay of humans. We are looking there to go to Moon, to stay there also with humans, but not for lifetime. Now, all of this is, of course, in Europe in coordination and cooperation with the European Union. And that means also this word of United Space and Europe is still valid, is still used by us. And if one looks into the files, it's clear that we have from the convention in 1975 to the MFF of the European Union starting next year, we have several aspects, the agreement of 2004, the Lisbon Treaty, the joint statement of 2016, and now the FFPA. So really Europe is uniting in space, and this means not only the European Union and ESA, but also, of course, with our member states. But there is life outside Europe, and therefore, as I said earlier, we are looking for a global cooperation strategy with our partners worldwide. There are different levels of cooperation. It could be that we participating in a project, that we have joint projects or joint programs even, and that we have institutional cooperation, and all of this looks to contents, capability, size, competitiveness, and geopolitics. Now, one buzzword which is used in the last years is new space. And most of the people are translating new space. These are young entrepreneurs who started in their backyard a space activity. I visited them and I asked them what is really specific for new space, and this is what they told me in short. Cost reductions, commercialization, disruptive innovation, artificial intelligence, agility and flexibility. None of them said it should be a small startup. None of them said it must be a new company. None of them. They said it should be cost reductions, commercialization, disruptive innovation, artificial intelligence, agility and flexibility. Now, if these are the characteristics of new space, then let's go to it. Why not? Why not thinking about a European new space agency and also putting industry in Europe, size what does not matter, into new space activities. And for us, it means also to look to new ways of how to work together. That means we are still a research and development entity, and we will be one. We have strong competence in that field. We have engineers, we have scientists, so we really know what to do in space. And we will be still like that, an agency, and I give the example of, which is also here in the picture, AELOS, this wind speed measuring satellite, which took about 14 years or something like that to develop. You cannot give this just as a request to industry. So this has to be done together because you don't know where you're going, because it's totally new area. We are partners. I mentioned the public-private partnership in telecommunication sector, but meanwhile we have in nearly all our programs, we have schemes like that where we are partnering with industry in launchers, in exploration, in navigation. In all our programs we have telecommunication, as I said before. So we have this partnership structure. We are a customer. I gave you this example, one example of space debris removal. And we are a broker. And broker is, for instance, the idea of the Moon Village is part of the broker idea, where we have our moon projects. Dave is responsible for them. Yes, we have direct moon projects, but at the same time, we are trying to have a broker function worldwide to put together private and public entities to not to go in race in space to the moon, but to go there and have complementary actions to do something which is valuable for all of us. There is also the question of digitalization in this new space discussion. With digitalization, we can make the processes better. And for me, it means that digitalization of ESA, the digital ESA, is at the same time also a green ESA, meaning by using the digital possibilities, we can reduce, for instance, our travels, we can reduce and optimize our processes, and all of this comes together for a new world. New ESA, as I said, the European New Space Agency. This concludes my presentation, and now I'm ready, and we are ready for all questions and answers, and I'm very happy that now Mr. Wörner is also arriving, because with that we have also the field of technology now over here. Go over there, please, on that side. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Jan Wörner, ESA Director General. So indeed, we're now open for questions. We will start here in the room, because of course we appreciate you all traveling here and coming here today. So please, when you have a question, please state your name and your affiliation. You might have noticed that there are microphones here in the first row where some of you are sitting, but of course it's also possible for those that are sitting in the second and third row to ask questions. Nicola there in the back, who is now raising her hand, can go around with a microphone in case you want to ask something. Peter, you want to start?
Sure. Just a couple of quick things to review on your slides, and then I'll get back in the queue. So first, you mentioned Romania as a change from Seville. Were there any other material changes and any other delegations, contributions since Seville? Okay. Second, could we later get a full camembert of contributions for 2020? You gave the contributions of the top 4, but could we get the other 18? Yeah? The pie chart of the contributions. Okay.
But again, I would say, Peter, allow me to say, you get rough numbers, because we can tell you the final budget on the 31st of December of 2020, because we know the money we have available. We can give you that money, but of course the flow of money here and there, sometimes we need to accelerate something, sometimes decelerate. So therefore, we will give you that number. Claudia, please, we will take care of that.
The FFPA, when do you expect that will be signed? Middle of the year, late year?
So something like Thursday, Friday. I don't know the week.
Or the
no,
month.
the question is, to be very,
okay.
blunt, the discussion we had to say one informal meeting last year about possible contents. So there are some aspects which is clear. Remuneration of ESA, if we are working for the Commission. So we are in the preparation. We will have next Monday with all the executive board. We have a discussion about what our positions in the main aspects is, and we will then also try next week to arrange with the European Commission some meetings, and we need to have a negotiation party. I think Copernicus took us something like 1 year or something like that. I don't know exactly. So we should be ready this year.
Okay.
This is my answer, and apologize my
Thursday,
Friday job.
That's
but
fair.
This is, yeah.
That's fair. And then the last question, since you mentioned on at several points the European Union as a partner, you know that after Seville, the Finnish presidency of the European Union, after canvassing the members, had decided on a 20% cut in the proposed space budget from 2021 to 2027. I don't know if that 20% cut will survive the final iteration. It might be more, it might be less. But does that cause any effects on what was agreed to in Seville with respect to Copernicus and Galileo particularly?
No, for us, so first of all, there was no decision about Galileo in Seville. It was Navis, but this is, okay, there is no effect of that. Concerning the Copernicus, we are taking care of the non-recurrent satellites. This is also more or less independent. But of course, we are now also in discussion with the European Union. And as I was involved in the discussion last year for the 16 billion, we will also support that this number is surviving. because we believe that we need it for Copernicus as well as for Galileo. There are two other aspects in it. It is SSA and Govs.com, which are minor numbers, but therefore we will try to convince each and everybody we should go with a stable budget in the future. And personally, I will also support the European Union in my possibilities, which are limited, that this number, 16 billion, will survive.
That was Peter Deselding from Space Intel. Are there any other questions in the room? Jonathan.
Jonathan Amos, BBC. First, a statement. Thank you for the way that you organised Space 19. That was much better from the point of view of the journalists. Still some improvements are required. Still felt that we were excluded from the meeting to some degree by being put in a different building. Access to delegates, very much difficult, not obvious to be able to speak to them. You know, I've said before about Space 4.0, if it means anything, it should mean transparency. You know, this is probably the last time that I get to speak to you as a European citizen, because in just I lose my EU citizenship in 2 weeks' time, along with certain rights and freedoms that come with that. One of the reasons that my fellow citizens in the United Kingdom made that decision was, to some degree, they misunderstood or did not understand how European institutions work. I think we can all benefit from greater transparency. In the example of ESA, I don't think it's acceptable now that we don't have the public posting of agendas and minutes. I understand there is sensitivity around commercial issues. These can be redacted. But we still have some way to go to make this organization fully transparent. So anyway, that's the statement out of the way. The space environment is going to change considerably this year. We've got the launch of Starlinks almost fortnightly now from SpaceX, and that's to be joined next month also by OneWeb, doing monthly launches of 30 or so satellites. So just looking at the American astronomy meeting last week in Honolulu, there was a sense that the leadership, certainly in the astronomy community, but maybe more widely in the space arena, is weak, and it is not really dealing with this issue with the urgency that is required. So we will see at the end of this year more than double the number of operational satellites that are in existence today. And I guess my question here is what is ESA doing to lead on this matter? You have relationships certainly with two of the European companies that are putting up constellations at the moment. There's OneWeb, there's also ESA as well. People talk about the optical problems that come from some of these satellites, but also there are emission issues as well from SAR that have been highlighted. So, yeah, I mean, what is ESA doing to lead on this situation?
I start with the first point. I totally agree with you that transparency is a high value. There is some limitation for transparency, and if you compare us with other organizations, of course, you might feel at the very beginning, oh, there's other organizations are more transparent because they show the agenda, and we do not give all the time the full agenda. But with Space 19 Plus, and I can tell you, it was already not so easy also for me to convince others that we have the first part fully open. It looks like a trivial thing, but it wasn't that trivial. And I did not hear about any restrictions to have discussions with the delegates. So this is a surprise for me, but because the delegates are free, what they do, they can do what they do. But I take your point, and I will look even for more transparency. But you have to understand, you said security issue is one. Another aspect is the competition. We are dealing with competition, and you will not see in any other body that the competition is dealt in public. That's just not possible. So therefore, if you look to our normal council meetings, sometimes we are going really into detailed discussion concerning competitive aspects. But I take your point, I take it seriously, and I thank you. Concerning the mega constellations, there are at least two aspects. One aspect is the one I try to tackle with the space traffic management aspect concerning space debris. You were saying the number of operational satellites will increase, and I say yes, but the number of non-operational satellites will also increase, which is an additional issue for me. And therefore, we are in discussion with these operators. So we are active. Not all of them are open for discussion, but for instance, with OneWeb, I had an intensive discussion also in December. They are ready to provide even better aspects concerning the deorbiting of their satellites, but of course they are also in a field of competition. If others don't take care of it and they take care of it, it's a question of cost, of price, and they're a little bit afraid about that they are the good guys, but the expensive ones. So we have to work on that, yes. Concerning the effect for astronomers, etc., we are active. We had a meeting with ESA, the European Southern Observatory, and we exchanged our information about that, and also to go ahead, I looked to Günther, he was there also in the meeting. They showed us their evaluation of impact on astronomy, in number-wise also. So we are not outside, but we are not a regulatory body. So therefore, we will take the lead wherever it's possible in our technological aspects, and in addition, we will join forces with others like ESA for the public awareness for the public activities. So, yeah, that's Günther. Any further from this? No. Good.
Thank you. Are there any other questions in the room? I think you had one. Please say your name and your affiliation. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Wörner. My name is Dmitry Orlov. I'm from Russian news agency TASS. I have a question concerning the bilateral agreement between European Space Agency and Roscosmos concerning the flights of European astronauts to International Space Station. What is the state of the progress of this agreement, when it might be signed, and when will the next European astronaut go to the space station?
So
Thank
now
you.
I look to Dave and he has to help me. So I understood, Dave, but you should correct me, that we have our space flights of astronauts are through NASA. So we don't do that directly with Roscosmos, but with NASA, and we have a barter element. That means we don't pay in cash for the flights, but we provide hardware. It was the ATV in the past, it's a Columbus module, and all of this. So therefore, this is not that we have, for that purpose, a bilateral agreement. But Dave, please correct me or add something.
100%. Is this working? Yeah, 100% correct. I apologise. I have a very bad cold, so if you can't hear me very well. Indeed, our astronauts are secured, as are Canadian and Japanese astronaut flights to the space station through the US cooperation. We provide presently the Orion service modules in exchange for the opportunity for astronauts to fly to the space station. So NASA undertakes the negotiations with Roscosmos for the use of Soyuz.
However, we have, of course, also bilateral agreements with Roscosmos, for instance, for ExoMars, and I will have another meeting with Dmitry Rogozin very soon, where we are discussing about further activities which we would like to do together. Also, the moon is part of that in exploration, but you were asking concerning the astronauts, and there you got the answer from Dave and myself. Dave, if you want to add something, there was...
Just that it's public knowledge that NASA has preparing the use of its commercial crew vehicles and a progressive transfer from the use of Soyuz. So when exactly that happens depends on when the US commercial crew vehicles become operational.
excuse me, actually the same question, but are you going to still use the Soyuz rockets in the near 3 or 5 years to launch the European astronauts to space?
So the answer is the following. What we did so far, we were not using the Soyuz. NASA was using the Soyuz, and we were happy that our astronauts could fly through NASA with Soyuz. And I was in Baikonur several times. And of course, I don't know about the details. I heard that NASA will buy another flight. Again, Dave, it's better.
Potentially two seats are being discussed.
What is afterwards, it's open. It's therefore I said I will have also a discussion with Mr. Rogozin about what can we do in the future. So far, our astronauts always were flying on NASA seats in the Soyuz capsule.
Are there any other questions? I think you were waiting already for a name. Please say who you are and who you work for. Thank you.
Yeah, Dan Thisdale, Flight International in London. One question that perhaps relates to this, but I have got two. One is if we can look at human crew spaceflight broadly, Europe, through the European Union and Council, through ESA, very clearly, as a matter of strategic priority, chooses to maintain its own independent capability in space. That includes transportation, and it includes ground services and ground monitoring, etc. But there is no European independent ability to put a crew in space. Now, can you comment on where that might go in the future?
Are you asking the DG of ESA or Jan Wörner? That's a different answer. So
Well,
the
how about
DG of ESA
both
is
of them address this
the
question,
DG
perhaps.
of ESA is very clearly saying the member states of ESA so far decided not to build a full capacity for European human transportation in space. After Hermes, which was stopped, there was Ariane 5 was still man-rated at the beginning in the first version, but it was never that the member states ask again. It was the opposite when I asked as the head of the German delegation some 8 years ago or something like that to upgrade the ATV and to put it on top of Ariane 5. The member states clearly said no. However, always a however, we are doing human transportation because the ESM, without the ESM, and the ESM is on the critical path of space transportation, Europe is in human transportation. And I would like to really to strengthen this point. So Europe is now in human transportation, but we don't have our full capacity and capability of bringing astronauts to space, and I believe this will not happen in the next years. By the way, there is also a positive effect of that, and this is the geopolitical interaction. I mean, if each and everyone has its own capacity, where is the need to work together? So sometimes also some deficits are good for some other things, for cooperation, bridging earthly crisis, etc. So I can see also some positive effects of that Europe needs to cooperate with the East and the West. This is also good for us.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, just my second question had similarly to do with transportation, and just obviously big year, Vega returns to flight, Vega C, Ariane 6, all hopefully will fly. What can you say from from ESA's perspective about smaller launchers? Obviously, in the United Kingdom, we're going to see Virgin Orbit fly. We're going to see essentially Rocket Lab's Electron fly. Orbex is also developing a launcher, different capacities, all of them maybe up to 450 kilograms to low Earth orbit, whatever it is. Where does ESA see this? The potential.
Now Lucia will help me. So what we had and what we have is also we had a study for micro launchers, as they are called. We are also looking to support them, but we do not have a full micro launcher program development. development program like that. You should react in a second. We are also discussing with some of our member states concerning spaceports, and these spaceports also for use of by ESA. If you look to the Space Rider, for instance, then it's not about launching but coming back. But Lucia, you can for sure say some words to this aspect.
Yes, indeed. We had studies in the frame of FLPP. We did launch also a call for ideas in 2018 as to not only micro launchers, but what were the ideas out there of industry to put up space transportation proposal for services in space, to space, and back from space. So from there we got a number of ideas, and we put all that together, and we had a proposal for the ministerial. So in Space 19 Plus we have a program which was funded, which is called Commercial Space Transportation Services and Support to Member States. This includes two elements. The first one is indeed to provide support, as the Director General was saying, not as a classical development where we fund 100%, but where industry demonstrates that there's a viability, economic viability, then we should support the growth of industry and then support this industry up to 50%. I say that because actually in that call for proposals we issued in 2018, most of the proposals concern micro launchers. The second element is precisely what the Director General was referring to, which is spaceports. And there is just the support of expertise of ESA to countries, member states of ESA, that would have national projects in the area of spaceports or a test infrastructure, and there it would be only ESA expertise.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucia. I think there is a question from the Frankfurter Allgemeine.
Thank you, Christian Schubert. 2 points. One is the European New Space Agency. Is this now really your official name? No, I suppose not.
I want to be a Pride Director General, but we will not change the name of the Director General to be the Pride Director General. So this is just a word to play a little bit with, which should mean ESA is looking for new space. I will not change the name, because if I change the name, I have to change the convention. I have to go to 22 parliaments, and I don't do that. So, and I don't believe that it would be a good approach to change the name. ESA is the European Space Agency, but, and therefore it's in yellow. Yes. It should just say we are tackling this issue of new space, and we want to be new space. This is the only thing, but it's not changing the name.
The second question is about return or return of work share, as they say, at least in the industry. I mean, you said where the money is coming from in terms of countries. You know, can you also say where the money is going to in terms of countries? And are the ministers today still insisting in the same way on this principle, which is a principle that is largely criticized because it's not good for efficiency, right?
It is criticized by some people, yes, whether it's largely or not. I now look to Eric, he has to help me. So the money, where it comes from, there it goes to, with some amount remaining in ESA. So this is something we need something for our people, for the salary of the Director General. But in general terms, this G-return principle remains, and I think it's an excellent instrument because of several reasons. Number one, I'm with you that I say open competition is also a good thing. But if you compare open competition in Europe and the G-return, you have to see that through G-return, we are really supporting all our member states, all 22, to build up competence in special areas of space where they are interested in. They can, through the optional programs, they can select where they would like to play or where they would like to develop their national industry. And I think this is therefore a really true European activity, because we should think about a European development of space and not only in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 countries. At the same time, I believe in parallel it's good to have also the open competition which the EU is doing. So it's if it would be not as it is, I would invent it, that we have both at the same time. So ESA is remaining with a georeturn, even in the program ADRIOS, this active debris removal in orbit servicing. We have the full georeturn principle. However, we turned it a little bit the wheel by saying not the member states decided where the work should go to, but the company which provided us with an offer, they had at the same time to define which country should contribute, and then this country get also the geo-return. Eric, you should say something about you can say what you like, but something also about the question, how close are we to one in the factor of geo-return? Maybe you can a little bit explain that one.
Yes, the policy of ESA is at the same time to give the money back to the member states in proportion to what they invest in ESA, but to do that in a way that is allowing us to organize competition. If you look at all the programs that Director General has presented to you, most of them will be contracted after open competition, and this is an important point. A geo-return is not incompatible with competition. It depends on how do you organize it. I would just take an example that was decided in Seville. If you take the scientific program, all the missions are always started after competition, and the geo-return is guaranteed over a period of 10 years. This is allowing you, with up and downs during the 10 years, to land where you want to land after a long period of time. This is allowing to put together, I repeat, competition and geo-return. Competition is bringing efficiency, and geo-return is bringing interest in our 22 member states.
And geo-return is avoiding monopolism. Monolithic, because by geo-return we are really having different actors permanently through the member states supported. This is also something we should not forget, because competition needs competitors, very simple, and through the geo-return we are building up competitors.
And doesn't geo-return also mean that your activities and your capacities are scattered all over Europe? There's no specialization in certain places.
I would not call it scattered, I would call it well distributed, because the different member states are really deciding, especially the smaller ones, are deciding what is their specific part. Even if the big ones, you look to the big ones, look to France. France is very clearly saying that they are in the launcher sector. They put their main aspect in the launcher sector. If look to Estonia, Estonia is looking for the cyber areas. And so we have countries by countries, we have some specialization, but we are not, as ESA, as the organization ESA, we are not forcing member states to limit themselves to one or the other area. So we keep, as Eric was saying, we keep this competition really open, but the member states are doing it by using their competence and then developing this or that area. I think this is really the beauty of geo-return, that the member states have a say also directly in what they would like to develop, and with geo-return we are developing a European industry across whole Europe.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? I would like to say as well that it's also possible to ask a question in French if you want to, if you don't dare to speak in English, so that's also perfectly fine, of course. So if you want to start very quickly, please. Thank you.
Yes. Paola Antolini, International Press Association and the Platinum Magazine. Thank you for this bright presentation. So we enter in the new decade with the new European Space Agency, let's say. For what it concerns the ecological aspect, the greener European Space Agency, you quoted the digital revolution. We would like to know a little bit more about the possible electric propulsion for the launcher. It's a matter that we already raised with Genève Legal on his press conference. And as well, how many objects are under ESA responsibility that would be deorbited? I mean, in terms of a percent, Voila. Any other concrete data would be welcome. We also notice that there is a lady for the launcher, which is a new, welcoming Lucia Linares, but still there is a space for gender equality improvement, it seems. So if there are also some good news and percent to announce, it will be very good, and Claudia is there. But we seem still to be a minority, it seems like. Voila, so thank you.
Okay, difficult questions. Coming first to the aspects of ecology and launchers, we are looking for green propulsion, yes. But with electric propulsion, Lucia will correct me if I'm wrong, with electric propulsion we cannot launch from ground. So we can use, Stefano? Lucia?
We can do kick stages.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say as the next point.
We have a
Yes.
program which...
but not from ground, this is what I was saying.
Not from ground,
Not from ground.
clear.
So we are using electric propulsion for kick stations and also for satellites to go from one lower orbit or from GTO, from geostationary transfer orbit, to the geostationary orbit. So using electric propulsion over there is something ESA is doing, is developing, and also for kick stages one could use it. There was in the past always a debate from the telecommunication industry saying it takes too long and we have to be quick from launch to the first day of operation. So this is a disadvantage of electric propulsion, but it's from the point of view of ecology, etc., it's fine. And by the way, it's also good because with green propulsion, we are right now, I look to Günther, we are flying to Mercury. So that's really a huge electric propulsion which is on board of that. But again, from ground, the power is not enough. But still, we have to think about what are we using for propulsion when we lift off. So for the lift off, also one can do it greener or less green. Concerning the second point, the gender aspect, I totally agree with you. We try very hard, whether you trust me or not, it's your decision, but we try very hard in each and every application which we open, which vacancy notice, to find women applying for it and then hopefully also succeeding. We have over here in the headquarters, I think we have a better balanced situation right now, but still in other areas, especially where engineering and so, we have some dominance of male. But again, we are right now, we opened the position for telecommunication. It is a lady, Magali Vézière, and I hope that we will find also a lady as a successor, and Günther wants to add something from your point, please.
This is a generational aspect, as you know, but I'm actually very pleased to see that in all the future leading activities, we have a very large number of young female scientists coming. I just come back from the Ariel conference in ESTEC, and there were almost 50% young females. And when we look at the Voyage 2050, our future vision exercise, the female in the young generation were actually very, very strong. So I'm really hoping that in the next generation we will see a change of picture.
And to empower that and accelerate that, I also established a Chief Diversity Officer. Azilia is over here. Azilia, would you like to say a word? Then we throw the microphone.
Just to give some figures, we had stellar here in terms of improvements in gender representation. We had an historical height in terms of application from girls to ESA positions, reaching almost 30%. And this was quite a good result, because only a few years ago we had 16%. Then we were able to recruit, 40% of recruitment were women, with a lower average age than in the past, and coming from a much larger number of countries. So I have to say that there is a momentum that has started. We don't have the figures for end of 19. DG has been this year for the second time nominated by the Women Economic Forum as a CEO champion. And we are also driving a moment with other international organizations, also with respect to disabilities, which is another subject that we want to support through space.
For she is called Chief Diversity Officer, taking care of gender, geographic, age, etc., etc. So that's so we are really looking to diversity in a very broad sense.
Anyway, if someone wants more detailed figures, we can provide them.
Yes, then there is the space debris. What percent
yes,
are
yes,
under ESA responsibility, and what
Okay.
are your plan in a concrete way? Thank you.
Okay, so it sounds so trivial because your question is going in that direction. It sounds so trivial yet that we say we take care of our debris. I can tell you it was not that easy. I got always, at the beginning when I started this discussion about this space debris removal, I got also messages, don't start it, because otherwise we have to do it for all of our stuff. And I'm convinced that this is the right way. I look to Rolf now. We had in the proposal, in the request for the Adrios, I think we had something like 100 ESA-owned assets we had, which we gave to them as a list with satellites, with upper stages, with adapters, etc. And these are the big things. Of course, if you count percentage-wise, ESA is not the most important contributor to space debris, by far not. But this is not an excuse for not doing something, and therefore we will do it. And Rolf, can you say something about the numbers?
I think about 5% of the global space debris population can be assigned to ESA. And we are having a clean space program. And the goal is within the 2030s to be neutral or even negative in our space debris balance, meaning that more ESA injected space debris will return than we will newly inject into the orbits around Earth. Then we do have the space debris mitigation guidelines, which say that satellites will have to come back 25 years after end of operation, and this will of course help. And new satellites, they are built for demise, and there are various techniques that we will use to bring them back and to cleaning the orbits, clean after ourselves.
In 25 years, this is an agreement, but I believe this is too long. We have to work on a shorter period, because if you look to this, which was mentioned earlier, the mega constellations and others, we cannot pollute for 25 years and hope that afterwards it's fine. So therefore, my personal opinion is we should be neutral as soon as possible. And with this Artemis mission, we will already show that one can be neutral, and that even in that respect, we will get back more than we insert. So therefore, it will be already negative in this sense, as Rolf was saying.
Yes, thank you very much to Rolf Denzing, our ESA Director for Operations. I would like to give the opportunity very shortly to our remote audience to have a question or two. So if I can have a microphone here on the right side, then we can listen to what they are asking.
Okay, so we have a couple of good questions coming online. Aviation Week, asking Ariane to Jan Wörner and ESA in general. Ariane Espace says ESA is responsible for the first launches of Ariane 6 and Vega C. What does this mean? When will they take place? And the second part of questions, when will Galileo provide full service? What will be its accuracy? And there was also a related question from another journalist. How can we avoid the Galileo incident that happened a few months ago? Thank you.
Okay, starting with the first, Lucia, we are planning Ariane 6 and Vega C maiden flight still to be in 2020. This is today's planning, and we hope to do so. These two flights are flights which are through the ESA program are financed. But Lucia, you can answer to this specific question maybe even better. What is the role of ESA to these two flights? That was the question.
Or was it Ariane Espace? It was was the role of Arianespace?
Role of ESA.
Okay.
Arianespace states that the role of ESA is.
So the role of ESA, obviously we're developing in full.
Microphone.
Yes. We're developing in full under an ESA program, both Ariane 6 and Vega C for maiden flights this year. The role is obviously to carry out these developments. For Ariane 6, we're also the launch system architect. I recall that there's a contract to the prime for developing the launcher. And then we have a contract with CNES for developing the ground. And the architecture of that is under ESA responsibility. So we're also launch system architect, in addition to the traditional role of programmatic management. When will those take place? The answer was given already twice, 2020.
Then the question concerning Galileo, and Paul will react on that. So Galileo is operational. You can receive the Galileo data, and the accuracy, as I always hear, is 3 times better than the American GPS. But so this is number one. Number two, the Galileo incident last year. Of course, we took it very seriously together with the European Commission and also with GSA. Looked into the details to avoid such an event again. But Paul can give better information than I can.
Yeah. In terms of operational capabilities, this will not go at one date. The full operational capabilities of the system will depend on the services we provide. So the open service, the search and rescue service, PRS, etc., etc. So successively over the next years, they will reach full operational capability. Of course, there is an infrastructure element in that, which is the completion of the constellation. At the moment, we still have to add a few satellites in order to come to a full operational constellation and have a few reserves in orbit, and then we already start replacing the first satellites. With regard to the incident, well, obviously this is something nobody wants, and if it has happened, nobody would want it to be repeated. So there is a big effort has been underway. There has been a number of independent investigations into the incident. One was done or organized by the Commission. The other was organized internally in ESA, where we have our Inspector General and 2 ex-Inspector Generals do an investigation. All of this material is coming together. There was work undertaken between the Commission, the GSA, and us in order to look into all of the aspects, including the technical design aspects, operations, and all the rest. And at the moment, measures are put in place to avoid this. There are a number of requests out to industry for a number of changes to the system in order to avoid this. So obviously, the purpose is that this can never ever happen again. It is not nice to have any outage, and an outage of 6 days on a system like this is just not something that we set ourselves as acceptable.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at the time. I think we have a few minutes left, so I think you're waiting already for a while, so I will give the floor to you. Please remember to state your name and affiliation. Thank you.
Merci. Sophie Becherel, France Inter. J'avais 2 questions, mais avant, je voulais souscrire totalement à ce qu'avait dit mon confrère de la BBC, Monsieur Amos, sur la perte de fluidité entre le service de communication et les journalistes. Merci, Monsieur Wörner, d'avoir travaillé à la transparence pour la première partie de la conférence. Néanmoins, il y a 10 ans en arrière ou 20 ans en arrière, cette question ne se posait même pas. Je voulais donc poser 2 questions, l'une sur ExoMars. Est-ce que le problème de parachute est totalement résolu? Est-ce que les équipes sont prêtes pour un décollage cet été? Et l'autre question concernait les vols habités. Le prochain astronaute à partir est donc Thomas Pesquet. Mais est-ce que vous avez plus de visibilité pour les autres astronautes du corps européen? Tim Peake vient de prendre un congé sabbatique de 2 ans. Est-ce que c'est en raison de l'absence de perspective d'un prochain vol? Est-ce que c'est comme ça qu'il faut l'expliquer? Merci.
So thank you very much. So what should I do? Should I repeat the question to those at the So the first question was about ExoMars and the question of the parachute, where are we standing? And so we had, as you know, we had a failure in the first trial. And I'm sure that Dave can explain the current situation, because together with NASA, there was development going on, and therefore my information is that we are now on a good side, that this is not any obstacle for the flight in summer of this year. But please, Dave.
So thank you, DG. I just recall that we had a number of tests related to the parachute system last year. There was a demonstration of the complete end-to-end system in terms of the sequencing of the parachute, which did function correctly. The anomalies occurred during the deployment of parachutes, and therefore we sought the support of JPL facilities to do some new ground tests, and in particular to redesign the bags for the main parachutes. So ExoMars has 4 parachutes, 2 main parachutes, 15 meters, 35 meters, and each one is extracted by a drogue parachute. So we've started the sequence of ground tests, and I think we reported publicly before Christmas the first 3 went successful. I can tell you a 4th test happened on Monday, which was the full deployment speed of the large main parachute, so 50 meters a second deployment of the 35-meter MP2 parachute, and it was successful. And therefore, we are now shifting our focus to preparing for 2 high-altitude drop tests to be carried out in Oregon in the US, using the final parachute design, but also the parachute design hasn't changed, but the bags with the modification. So those are planned for February and then March. And only when we have completed those tests will we know that we have a system that's safe to launch.
Concerning the astronauts, there was a question about the future astronauts. So we had in 2009, we had a selection of astronauts, and we selected, ESA selected, 6 astronauts with different nationalities. And I, from the very first day when I arrived at ESA, said that all of these 6 should have 2 flights. So we had 2 flights already for Alex Gerst and now for Luca Parmitano right now. The next one will be, as you correctly pointed out, Thomas Pesquet. And then we still have Samantha Cristoforetti looking for a second flight. We have Tim Peake and Andreas Morgensen. And we have also later, we also put out of the first selection of 2009 also another candidate, Andreas Maurer, who is also looking. Matthias Maurer. I don't know why I'm always saying Andreas. I don't know. So we have Andreas Morgensen and, okay, it's Matthias Maurer. I have to apologize. Matthias Maurer, and we are also looking for a flight for that. And I can tell you that also the Space 19 Plus, when we discussed about the exploration program, that of course member states were asking for having flights for these people. So Tim Peake decided by himself to have this sabbatical, I would call it, has 2 reasons. It's not that he is frustrated by ESA, not at all. He believes that it's good to use this time for 2 purposes. One is private life, which I totally accept as such, and the other one is also to prepare also for some life later on. So both is fine for me, and he is still an astronaut in the astronaut corps of 2009, and therefore he will have a second flight. I cannot give you a clear and how should I say, a confirmed message of who will be the next one and so on, because this depends also in a discussion with NASA. So this is always together with NASA and the other partners of the ISS to confirm. But as I said, we are looking forward to have a second flight of Samantha. We are looking forward to a flight of Matthias Maurer, Andreas Morgensen, and Tim Peake. Dave, is it correct as I said it?
Yes, and we have a great confidence we can do that now as a result of the successful outcome of Space 19 Plus. So it's thank you to the member states.
Thank you very much. That was David Parker. Just looking at the time, we have come to the end of this press briefing. I want to thank very much Jan Wörner, our Director General, for being here today with us, but also, of course, his group of directors and colleagues. All of them will be available after this press briefing. If you have additional questions or requests, please come and talk to them. Thank you very much to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you from my side as well.